Hello everybody and welcome back to Civilian Principles. Today's discussion is going to be long-range packs. Now before we get started, I just wanted to say one thing, that I'm glad you made it through another week and I'm proud you've made it this far. There's one thing that really isn't discussed a whole lot in the community, and it's mental health. I think it's extremely important because, I've lost friends to suicide. You don't have to go through something alone. And if you think you do, you're wrong. I'll put the suicide hotline right here at the bottom of the screen. And even if you don't want to call that, reach out to a buddy. See if they want to hang out, talk to them, or just tell them what's going on. But just remember, you don't need to do everything alone, okay? The world is not on your shoulders, all right? Everything can get better. You just kind of got to push through the bullshit a little bit, all right? All right, so like I said, we're going to be going over long-range packs. Now, what is a long-range pack, all right? For the military, it's just a ruck, all right? For people who are professional hikers, it's their backpack, all right? For the everyday person, a long-range pack is going to be something that's going to carry everything that you could possibly need to go anywhere from 1 to 5 days traveling on foot. It's going to sustain you. It's going to give you shelter if you need it. It's going to carry everything you can need from food, water, lights, any camping equipment, anything you can think survival-wise. It's all going to be in there. And throughout this video, I'm going to talk about the importance of having a long-range pack set up, what you should put in there, some things that I've noticed have helped me throughout my time in the military, as well as other times of just training on my own, what I've seen works and what doesn't work. First thing we kind of have to talk about is understanding your physical ability to even move with this weight, right? A long-range pack isn't going to be 15 pounds. Traditionally, it's going to be anywhere from 35 to 50, all right? So you need to understand your limits, right? Now, what I'm saying here is load your pack with whatever you can. If you want to put weights in there, whatever, but get some training in moving under that weight, right? And not just the weight of your ruck, but also your kit. Whether it's some BLM Land, whether it's, you just rucking around in the desert or the forest, whatever the case is, just put your stuff on and go. Figure out how far you can go before you start feeling severely fatigued, how far you're going before you realize that, like, oh, hey, I think I'm getting splinters. Are my boots working correctly? Was I hydrated enough going into this? Do I have the right stuff? Is stuff packed right? Does my back hurt? There's a million things that go into this, right? And I think this is a very overlooked topic. Last week, we kind of talked about having that ready bag or that go bag, right? But that's for an immediate situation and about 24 hours to go from where you're at to where you need to be, all right? This pack is more or less, your vehicle might not work or something's happening and major roadways are blocked and you need to go on foot. Whatever it is, right? Whether it's emergency, invading force, civil unrest, having that pack and having the ability to sustain yourself, you're not going to be a liability to anyone you're trying to care about. You're not going to be a liability to yourself. And at the end of the day, the whole goal is for that pack to help you survive through any environment that you could be in or you might come into. And with what I talked about when it comes to you wearing your kit with your long-range pack or your ruck or your backpack, whatever you want to call it, right? One thing I see a lot of, which I was guilty of too, is when it comes to running a plate carrier, the whole fad of like everything needs to be a back plate panel, right? You have, C4 or breaching tools or batteries, whatever it is, but you had it on that back panel. Once you try to put on a ruck, that becomes 30 times harder having that back panel. It's not going to sit right. You may not be able to get it cinched down correctly. It's going to cause a lot of stress on you. So understanding that if you need to move with a long-range pack, you might want to have a way to take off that back panel quickly. Now, this is assuming that you're running a plate carrier, right? If you're running a chest rig, you really shouldn't have this issue, but just understanding with plate carrier-wise, what you have on your back is going to hinder your ability to move with a heavier sustainment pack like a long-range pack or a rucksack. And then the last thing before we get into the packing list, right, and we talk about some other things, is you might watch this video and you think, man, I really want these items that he talked about, or, I didn't like what he said here, but I think I can find another way around it. The biggest thing is you don't have to go buy all this right now. I understand everyone is in a financial crisis right now, right? We kind of talked about in the podcast, the world is not looking good, especially in the United States. A lot of people can't afford a lot of things, right? pick and choose what you believe is the most important to you, right? I'm going to say a lot of stuff. I'm going to tell you what I believe is important because that's based off of my experience, and don't let my experiences completely dictate how you pack stuff or what you purchase. But you don't need to buy everything right now, right? Be smart. Don't put your family in debt because you need to buy some $900 -50 sleeping bag when you live in the middle of Tucson, right? So just be responsible with your funds and really just don't go overboard all out. Now, if you have the money to do all that, by all means, knock yourself out. But again, a majority of the people that are going to be either watching this or it might get shared to, they might not have that fund. So buy what you think you need now and keep moving forward. Maybe set a monthly goal. I want to save $100 every month. I'm putting it towards this bag. Go ahead and do that. There's no harm in that, right? But again, remember, get the important things out of the way first, right? You get your nice ruck, whatever it is, and you don't want to go and like, okay, well, I need a ruck. I'm going to go buy quad tubes. It doesn't make sense, right? That's not going to help you survive out for a long duration of time. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the Alice Pack, right? The Alice Pack is a older design for rucksacks, right? We have a bunch of new ones that have come out with all sorts of different frames, materials, whatever the case is, right? I like the simplicity of an Alice Pack. Generally speaking, they're pretty large. They have sewn on pouches on the outside so you can divide things and maybe separate things a little easier. But it has a metal frame, which I love. They're pretty hard to mess up, and if you mess it up, you've done something wrong. But having that metal frame with thick nylon and just being able to carry a bunch of weight, it's really beneficial for your pack and what you're going to be carrying in it. The next thing I'm going to talk about is I think it's called Marting Top 75-liter ruck or hiking backpack, whatever it is. I also have one of those, and again, I'll put another picture right here. But that thing is also awesome. It has a front open zip, kind of like a gym bag, right? So I can easily get into whatever I need. It's got a bottom compartment, and then it has a top compartment, two sides, where you could honestly fit a breaching tool or, a large shovel, a rifle, whatever the case is, you can fit it in there. On the sides as well, it has areas where you can store water or maybe things you need to get quick access to. On the waist pack, it also has pouches that you can put stuff in. And again, it's really good, and that one's also usually right around $100, depending on what they're running sale-wise, what color you get. But that thing has done a lot for me. I've been able to fit a lot of shit in there, and all the little tiny spaces that it has where you can store random things so it's not taking up the bulk of, hey, I need to rip into this and get into it quick. It has it for you. And again, it's fairly cheap. I've used it for the last, I'd say, year and a half, and it's done really well for what I've put it through. Same thing with that Alice Pack. I've had that Alice Pack for about 4.5 years now. And I've beaten that thing to death. I've thrown it out of Bradley's, off of LMTB's, down mountains, and it's still standing. I haven't had a tear on it. I might have some fraying, but the frame is really good. But yeah, again, these rucks, they do a whole bunch, and the two I suggested to you are going to be really good for what you need. Now, you can go get some milsurp from whatever surplus store you have near you, maybe an ACU, rucksack. Those are also massive. They have two openings, top and the bottom. They're fairly cheap, right? You don't have to go buy a new one. You can always buy a used one, but they're pretty fairly cheap. So understanding that, hey, that might also work for you. And the other thing is you can go out and buy a Mystery Ranch bag or what is it, Everall stock. I always butcher that name, but whatever it is, right? You can find a rucksack. So whatever is going to work for your needs, right? Go for that. Look at how much it's going to carry. Look at the support system on it. Is it made out of some type of polymer? Is it made out of metal? Does it have an internal or external frame? Whatever it is, look it up. But my two suggestions are going to be the Alice Pack or the Marting Top, and then any sort of milsurp after that. I think it's going to be great for what you guys need it to do, which is carry stuff and walk with it. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about is a Ruck Skrim. I know that's a fancy term that's being used, or just camo netting, right? Some type of way to camouflage your ruck. Doesn't have to be while you're wearing it, but if I need to put it down, all right, I need to sleep with it. I don't want it popping out if it's some weird color that doesn't match my environment. So having something I can easily put around it to break up how it looks to a human eye and just hiding in general, right? I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, that Marting Top I was talking about earlier, is really well at doing that. It also has a built-in rain cover for it. You can spray paint it different camos, whatever the case is, but that option is there. But again, surplus camo net is everywhere. If you need to use a tarp, go ahead and do so. And then with that camo net, right, being able to attach it to that rucksack, you can use it as, you can put bungee cords, loop it through there, and then you can have it on there at all times. It's not really coming off. When you need to get into it, simply undo the bungee from the frame, and you're good to go. You're able to get right into what you need to do. All right, so we've already gone over rucks and some sort of way to conceal it. All right, the next thing is going to be your water source, right? The human body can go anywhere from 3 to 8 days without water, right? But after like that second or third day, you're going to start feeling nauseous. Headaches are going to start coming in, cramps, whatever the case is. There is a lot that goes wrong when you start to dehydrate. The biggest thing being, you're not going to have the energy to move, right? If I'm dehydrated, I'm not going to want to do a whole lot. I'm just going to be looking for a way to find water, and it's really going to screw me up whether I need to move from here to 15 miles away or, I'm trying to evade whatever it is, right? If I don't have that water, I'm pretty shit out of luck, all right? So whatever you do with that, right, have enough to, again, at least last 3 days, right? So what I like to do is I like to have on my kit, I like to have a canteen or a Nalgene, right, that I try to drink from when I'm doing movements or, anything that requires me to not really either A, care about the ruck or have enough time to take it off my ruck, or B, it's just right there. It's easy to use. I don't have to worry about ripping a hose around it, getting caught in something, taking the camel back off, putting it back on, whatever the case is, right? So I'll have that Nalgene or canteen on my person, and then I'll have a camelback on my ruck. There's a few ways you can do that. Some camelbacks have clips where you can attach it to the molly. I've seen people 550 cord them on or use a carabiner and it kind of flops around. I've seen people put them in the rucksack, which should be a good idea, but you are taking up valuable space. Again, as you drink that water, it'll kind of deflate. You'll get that space back, but that's not something I want to risk right off the rip. And the other benefit with that, right, if I have it on the outside, if I need to do anything where I'm ditching my ruck, I can simply put that camelback on and start moving. And it doesn't need to be a legit camelback, right? It doesn't need to be, you got it issued in basic or you bought whatever $300 system online. You can go out and get a tiny little backpack, right? Spray paint it, whatever color for your environment, throw a bladder in there, and then again, you can hook it to your main ruck. The other thing with bladders for your water source, right? If you can, try to get a hold of a military issued CBurn bladder. All right, one, it's not as susceptible to chemical problems as most regular bladders are. Two, with that, they're super thick. They are very thick. They don't tear easy. They don't just randomly burst in your bag if you fall on it, right? I've been using the same one. I clean it out, but I've been using the same one for about 5 years now, and I've never had a problem with it. The other benefit to that, right, is with that thicker material, it being stored in a pack, it stays cooler longer. I've noticed, at least with the CBurn ones. So again, that's helping me. It keeps me hydrated, and it's just one less thing I have to worry about. It's not really a failure point. All right, and then with that water source, you're going to want some way to get water, right? So there's a few different options here. One of them being you can carry one of those life straws. I think those are really cool, but they do require a lot of effort to take in water, whether you're sucking it right out of a pond or whether you're filling it up in a canteen and then using it later, right? You could be contaminating some things, but a life straw is a good backup to have in case you don't have water or you run out of your water within that first 72-hour period, and it's like, hey, I really need to get hydrated. I'm starting to feel real fucked up right now. How do I do this? All right, the other thing you can do with that too, right, you can get iodine tablets. Those are pretty easy, right? You just pop them in. It'll clean out that water, and then with the iodine tablets, you can also use unscented bleach, right? I think it's 8 drops of unscented bleach per gallon of water. And you just shake it up, let it sit for a little, let that debris kind of go down. But either way, if I'm trying to purify that water, I'm going to want a way to filter it as well. So a really good tip is going to be using cheesecloth. Cheesecloths are really good at grabbing a bunch of random crap that you're trying to pour out, right? If you've used it, great. I don't want to bore you, but if you haven't used it, you can tie it around the lip of maybe a 1-gallon jug, pour it out into whatever your source is, and I'd say 95% of the shit that you had just cleaned is going through, and there's not particles in that water. The next thing we're going to be going over is food, right? So we went over Ruck, your Skrim, water. All right, next thing is food. Again, food, you can go about 7 to 21 days, again, depending on the environment, how comfortable you're in, how hot it might be, what conditions is going on, how long you're moving, right? You can go a while without food, but again, you don't want to, right? So there's a few options you can do with how you're packing your food or how you're preparing yourself. The first thing is going to be making your own version of an MRE, right? I'm going to try to use non-perishables as best I can, or something that's going to have a high shelf life, all right? So for me, a lot of the times I like to use ramen and then canned protein, whether it's chicken, tuna. If you can find canned steak, I guess go for that. I haven't seen that, but if you can, good. But having some sort of source of protein.
Awesome, I love protein.
I know you love protein. I love protein too.
Right, that I might be able to mix in with that ramen or just eat alone. I'm probably going to be carrying protein bars as well. You know, not a lot of the time do you get to sit down and really cook up a good meal, so I need something that's on the go. You can have it easily stored on your kit if you start moving, or on your ruck if it has that waist strap pocket system. You can throw them in there, and then easily grab that while you're moving, kind of nom that down and be good. And then the other thing is going to be some sort of high sugar, right? It's going to help you with these movements. So a big thing in the military, right? I know Sean Ryan talks about it, is gummy bears. Gummy bears are extremely important. I can't remember the last time I went on a ruck or any sort of long range movement where I didn't have gummy bears. It's a really good way to get a quick burst of energy in.
I'm fast as fuck, boy.
Kind of helps you feel better, and it's a nice treat too. So, you know, having those, that protein, carbs, and then that sort of sugary diet with you is going to be really beneficial for your long-term sustainment. And the second part of that, you can go with MREs, right? I talked about it in my last video. If you're not really putting out a lot of calories, which if you're moving as much as I imagine most people would be if they needed this long-range pack, you might. But, you know, MREs are a really efficient way of having a bunch of high-calorie food, a semi-good source of protein. You're covering a whole bunch of the food pyramid there. But having something easy you can break into, you can eat it cold, right? You may not have that time to sit there and heat your meal up. So having that meal that doesn't require a cooking element, it's really just shove into your body and then continue moving, that's good to have. If you are going to carry MREs, make sure you field strip them. And what field stripping is you're going to open your MRE bag up and you're going to look at it and see what you need and what you don't need, right? Do you not like coffee? You don't need the little Tabasco sauce packet. Maybe you don't want whatever pie is in there, or that all the cakes that it come with that just give you horrible cotton mouth, right? Taking all that extra shit out and then putting all the stuff you need back in there, you're going to notice you have about 2/3 more space, and then you can take another few MREs, do the same thing, throw it in there as well. So now you have almost a week's worth of food in a one MRE sized bag. But again, the con to having that MRE is it's going to back your system up, right? If anyone tells you it doesn't, they're a liar. You start eating MREs, you're going to be really backed up. It's a shock to your body. It's going to take you a while to shit, which could cause problems later on down the road if you're coming across that. So again, give or take, do you want to make your own stuff with stuff you like, or do you want something that's very easy and relatively inexpensive? So coming out of the food aspect, right, I'm going to need something to cook with if I want that, right? And it's not only cooking with something, but it's also another way to maybe cleanse or purify your water. And, you know, having a good cooking source is really just going to make your life a whole lot easier. If you do get those moments to sit down and make that meal, it's really going to boost your morale, right? You might be hating your life that you're having to ruck and do all this stuff. But when it's time to actually lay down and possibly go to sleep, you know, I might be able to cook up a quick meal, and it's just going to help me feel a lot better, right? But one of the cooking sources I like to use, right, I had a jet boil for a long time, and I was really never impressed with it, and it cost a ton of money. The can that it came in, or the cooking canister itself, they were always way too small for what I needed it to do. One thing that I really do suggest you look at is the Fire Maple Thick Star 1. It's essentially a knockoff jet boil, right? But I've had one for 2.5 years now, and that thing has gone through everything with me, whether it's, you know, extreme deserted environments with dust storms, to pissing rain, to keeping me warm in a tent, right? I've used it a ton. The canister is pretty big. You can shove random shit in there, maybe utensils or random survival stuff. But it comes with the canister, it comes with the base. You can fit whatever fuel source you want in there. You can slap it in there, and then it has a lid as well that kind of turns it into a cup. But, you know, you can cook your food in the same time. You can also be purifying whatever water you need to do, right? Boiling the hell out of it, getting that nasty shit out of there, right? It's all a one unit ecosystem. Again, it's really good. I think I paid $40 for mine. I can't recommend that thing enough. It's really great. And the other side of that too is if I don't want to buy that, right, I kind of want something that I can do a little bit more with. You can go to Walmart and just get those little propane stove toppers, right? They are the size of a baseball. They, unspool out. You can connect a little whatever propane or butane source you want, slap that on there, and maybe if you wanted to carry a pot or a pan with you, you absolutely can do that, right? Maybe have a little bit more means for cooking, but you can absolutely do that. It's another great way to have a way to cook food, purify water, and then keep yourself warm in, again, a relatively inexpensive and small package. All right, and then the last thing on the food topic of this is going to be some sort of utensils, right? I see a lot of people, they go and buy metal utensils and they're like, this is God's gift to the earth, whatever. I've owned a lot of metal utensils, and it doesn't matter what I do to clean them. I feel like shit's always sticking on there and it just wigs me out. And then if it scrapes anything else that's metal, it starts to rust up, and now you've just got a whole nother set of problems. Maybe you don't want to use it, or you say fuck it, and then you didn't get your tetanus shot, now you're screwed. Whatever the case is, right, that's going to be there. But I recommend the Walmart. It's like, I think it's a spoon, a fork, a knife, and then a spork, and it's like 35 cents, and it comes on a little hook. You can easily throw that back into that fire maple, or you can throw it in a jet boil, or just keep it in a little baggie. And then with all this, right, I don't want these things making a lot of sound. So anything that's going to have that metal on metal contact, I might want to wrap in a sock, right? You'll see a lot of pictures of guys in the military. You might see their canteen pouch, and you'll see what looks like a black sock popping out of the top. It usually is. It's to stop maybe their nods rattling around in there, right? A lot of people use the canteen cup to protect the nods, which is also really bad because you're just bashing it around in metal. But having that sock in there really mitigates a lot of that sound. It's dampening the clanking or the possible tinking, whatever it is. It's helping reduce that noise signature that you would have at any given time. All right, the next thing is going to be your fire starters, right? At any given time in my ruck, I will have about 4 Bic lighters, right? I like something that's very convenient, very easy for me to use. And I like to carry a lot of them. I think with 1 Bic lighter, I probably get, like, if I'm using it consistently, 3 months use out of it. So having 4 is kind of that overcautious piece of the gear. But again, I like having that option too. I can either hand them out if someone needs it, or I don't have to worry about them going down. The flip side of that is I also like carrying a Zippo with me. Now with that, when you start looking at your long range pack and your ruck, a Zippo, I've had them last about a week to a few months. With a little bit of lighter fluid, but I also keep it stored correctly. I try not to let it dry out, and I'm also refilling it. So my times might have varied, and I might be, gaslighting myself here. But having that Zippo, it's notoriously windproof. It's been through more wars than most Americans have. And it's just a really cool piece to have. You can trade it off if you have other means of creating a fire. Maybe you use it as a bartering tool. But again, you're going to carry that lighter fluid, and then you might want to carry some wick and some of the little flint that goes with it. Just in case you're using it for a long period of time and something happens and it goes out, you don't want to be fucked, and that was your only way of having a fire starting source. You can always use a fire rod and a knife too to kind of get things going, right? I know a lot of people don't like using it. I think they're personally great. I have one in my ruck at all times as well. Again, redundancies here. But I like having it. It's cool to kind of feel like I'm a primitive again, sparking rock on rock, starting that fire, right? Except for it's a $30 piece of equipment I bought from wherever. But I like having that. It's cool to use. That thing is probably going to outlive use. You're never going to really have to worry about, is it not going to work when I need it to? And then the last thing with that is going to be matches, right? You can go and get massive box of the life-proof matches. You can go get any sort of small booklet of matches. Whatever the case is, right, you have those options. Onto another extremely important piece of gear I think you should have is going to be your sleeping pad, right? Some sort of way to break up the ground from absorbing your body heat. All right, it's really nice to just get the fuck off the ground, right? You might be moving through really crappy terrain all the time, might be wet. It's just really comfortable having that little bit of cushion between you and the earth. And again, it keeps your body heat from going straight into the ground, you getting extremely cold in your sleep and having to worry about a lot. And I'm placing that before sleeping bag because there's a lot of times where you might not need a sleeping bag, depending on what time of the year. It's not a bad idea to have a sleeping bag, and we'll talk about that next. But, If you had to get anything at all, I'd recommend getting that sleeping mat, just again to kind of break up that heat transfer, and again, sort of comfortability, whether you just want to use it as a pillow, to kind of use it as a chair at some point to cushion your ass, but whatever it is, having that sleep mat's great. There's a lot of different sleep mats. You can get the old school style yoga mat ones. You can use the newer inflatable ones. You can get ones that you just press like a bike pump and it'll inflate that as well. You can get the ones from Walmart that have like an emergency blanket kind of thing around it to even bounce that heat back. And they fold up. You can store it however you want to. But yeah, there's a million different options out there. I personally use a little inflatable one. It breaks down to about this big, and I can throw it in my bag at any time. And then when I want to use it, I just quickly blow on it. It takes about 20 seconds, and then I have a way to mitigate that heat transfer. Sleeping bags are going to be a big one, right? That's going to depend on what type of environment you're in, and then your purpose for it. A lot of people aren't going to need a full suite of the military sleeping gear, right? Where it has 3 systems, it has a cold weather or hot weather, and then a bivvy. Some people might just go to Walmart and this is, hey, where I'm at, it doesn't get above this temperature and below this, so this fits my needs. And some people live in Alaska where, God really just hates them and keeps it cold damn near all year round, and the sun's up for half of it and then down for the rest of it. So some of you might need that. But again, finding that purpose and what you might need. I'm going to put right here, again, the sleeping bag that I use. I have about 4, but I've really fallen in love with the mummy style stuff. Right, it keeps me from rolling around at night. It keeps me compressed, and these things get really warm in the winter. And then in the summer, I just kind of zip it, let that air flow in, and I'm cool. I'm collected. I'm not really sweating my ass off. So yeah. Now on to shelters, right? I do like having some sort of shelter whenever I'm going out, right? Again, not everything's going to dictate you have a shelter, but it's very nice to sleep in something that's protecting me from the elements. And then also having something where, hey, I'm exhausted and it's the middle of the day, the sun's beating down on me and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I don't want to make a shelter out of bushes so I can pop up something easy. The first thing I really like, which you can find on Amazon, and again, I'll put a picture up right now of the one that I like to use, but finding some sort of shelter, for me, it was always the A-frame style shelter. Super easy to set up, and they compact down really well. And it's an all-around good system. It keeps your signature very low, very reduced, and also it's keeping, again, that protection from the elements at any point during night or day. The other things I like to carry too, if I have the room, is going to be either a poncho or a tarp with some trekking poles. Right, if I don't have that A-frame, you can turn that into an A-frame. Right, just getting that overhead cover out of the way, you can kind of hook things down. Right, you will need some stakes for it, but if you want to use that, again, a tarp has a million different purposes, kind of the same way a poncho does. You can create whatever you want out of it, whether it's an A-frame. I've seen people make kind of the teepees. There's a lot of different things you can use with a tarp. Again, with the surplus thing, you can use the life fighter tents that the Army has issued. Right, it's kind of a half dome. It's 2 long poles that snap into each other. You run it through, it turns into this. Again, this dome, you could fit 1 to 2 people in there. They do have a 2 to 4 man, but it's a lot bigger. But the life fighter tents, again, they break down to about this big, and it has a bug netting in it, and you can take off the entire top, which kind of works as a poncho as well. But you can take that off, so it's a cool night or whatever. That air is going through, but you're not getting messed up with bugs. Or you can put it on when it's pissing rain. You can extend the wings out on it where you enter in, and you can put all your gear under that as well. So again, you have a very small signature, and all your stuff's not getting pissed on. And then with that, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, whatever tent you decide to do, right, a lot of the surplus stuff is supposed to be waterproof, but if it's used, that waterproofing is kind of gone. And then if you're buying something straight off of Amazon or whatever, REI, Big Five, Cabela's, a lot of the times it's not really that waterproof. So you can get a can of waterproof spray for about $10 and just lay it out in your garage if you want to really huff in that fume, or lay it out in your backyard. Spray everything down, let it dry up, spray it again, and then you've essentially waterproofed your gear. You can do that with your tents, your rucks, and your sleeping bag if you want to do it on the outside. If it's not really rated to take in water, it'll at least let that water run off and not seep right through. Waterproof bags or thick trash bags, right? You're going to have the milsurp, again, I keep bringing it up, right, because these things are available, but It's a big green bag with a black inside. If you go to whatever surplus store, you look in it, right? What you want to do is turn it inside out, stick your head in, and look at the lights. If you see pinholes, don't get it. If you find one magically that doesn't have a single hole in it, all right, I would snag that up. But that's really good for storing anything that's supposed to stay dry, electrical, maps, Garmin's, your phone. If you want it, you can throw it in there, tie it up, and then it's not going to get messed up by whatever you're coming through. Or if your Camelback does pop, whatever it is, having that way to waterproof your gear is extremely important. But if you don't want to go spend the money on that, you can always go get I use 44-gallon trash bags a lot, usually because they're thicker. And then I might put whatever in there and wrap it up twice, use a rubber band, close it, and I'm good. They both do the same thing. Again, it's really, do you want to spend the money on the bag, or do you want to spend it on trash bags you might already have? I'm not telling you which one to do, but again, I usually have both. I'll keep waterproof bags in my ruck. I'll throw all my shit in there, and then I might throw a trash bag in there just in case something else fails. All right, another thing is going to be your digging tools, right? Whether it's an e-tool or a fixed mini shovel, all right, you're going to want something to dig with. Maybe you need to dig out some hard ground. You're trying to set up your shelter, or you're trying to make a foxhole or a hasty. You're going to need something to dig through it. So your e-tool or a mini shovel is going to be perfect in that scenario. I personally recommend a mini shovel over an e-tool, just because if anyone watches this and you've used an e-tool before, all right, they're great for like the first 4 uses, and then after that, dirt and debris starts getting in the hinges. It might not lock up correctly, and essentially you've just got a spade and you're trying to claw at it like some sort of caveman. Having that mini shovel, usually there's a really sharp serrated side, and then there's a dull side that you can break stuff with, whatever the case is, right? Having that, I have found that to be 10 times easier, and it lasts a lot longer than any sort of e-tool does. One big thing that I think everyone should have with them is size 36 CMI Twine. All right. I think this is a way better alternative to 550 cord, right? Paracord. It's really small, right? It's still thick. It's about, I'd say, a third the thickness as 550. It doesn't hold the 550 pounds that are rated, but everything I've used it for, it's held up perfectly fine. Again, I'll plug a Corporal's Corner here. He does everything with this twine. He's the one that put me onto it. I've watched him build, suspended hammocks or suspended tents, building forts using this twine as the thing that's piecing everything together, and it's never broken. It's never given him an issue. I bought it. I've never had an issue with it. It's extremely compact, and it's way lighter than 550 or paracord. And if you can't get a hold of it, which again, I'll plug a lot of this, pretty much everything I'm talking about right now, I'm going to put it in the description with an Amazon link. But if you can't get a hold of that and you can only get your hands on some paracord or 550 cord, by all means, go ahead and use that. Just remember, it does take up a lot of space. And a lot of times when you cut it, you kind of get a one-time use. With the twine, it's cheap, it's extremely durable, and you get, I think, 3 times as much in a bundle this big than you would with 550 cord. The next thing I don't see talked about a lot, right, is having some sort of medical. We talked about it with the ready bag and the realistic civilian response loadout, right? But medical, right? And it's not just a tourniquet and, an IFAC. Having anti-diarrheals, right? If I have to get into a situation where I might need to purify my own water and I mess up whatever formula I'm supposed to be using for it, right? Having that anti-diarrheal so I don't shit myself to death is going to be extremely important for my health and my longevity out when I have to go do something or evade. The other thing too is ibuprofen, Advil, Tylenol, right? Again, those things kind of mitigate headaches, or something happens, you sprain your ankle, right? It's starting to get inflamed, kind of reduces swelling. Having those things is going to be very helpful for you. And then you're also going to want Band-Aids, again, like we talked about in the last video and the podcast, right? Not everything is a bullet wound, and not everything is a bayonet charge through your thigh, right? You're going to encounter a lot of scrapes if you have to go into the wild or even in an urban environment, right? So having Band-Aids on hand is extremely, extremely important for you. Just be able to patch it up and keep moving. Having those tourniquets, again, another extremely important thing, right? If I fuck myself up, and I fall down, a hill, and I have my bone sticking out, I might be able to tourniquet my way, not out of it, but at least stop the bleeding. And understanding how to use a tourniquet is extremely important, right? You don't need to put it on everything, but you have a time frame putting your tourniquet on to, you might not have feeling in that leg again to, hey, we're going to need to amputate it. So whatever it is, right, understand how to use that tourniquet, but tourniquets are extremely helpful. And then the last part of that I'll talk about, because we talked about medical a lot in the last video and then the podcast, is going to be gauze, right? Gauze have a million different uses. You can use them for splints. You can use them for, small fractures. You can use them for burns, whatever the case is, right? Gauze are very applicable to almost every single need. If you don't have a Band-Aid, a lot of the times gauze will suffice just as well. All right, so maps and a compass and or a Garmin, right? Alex said in the podcast, analog is king, right? And I kind of believe that as well. I do like having that comfort of having something electric where I'm really not having to rely on, what I had to learn in the past. But again, knowing how to read a map, how to plot points, figuring out where you're at versus where you need to go is extremely important as well. Again, buy a laminator, laminate your maps for where you're at now, and then all the way to where you think you'd ever need to go, the surrounding area. If you don't want to do that, you can, just print them out, stuff them in a Ziploc bag. You can go get road maps from truck stops kind of around your area. And then you can also get trail maps like the artist talked about in the podcast as well. Those will show areas that you might not have thought of. And if you need to find quick shelter, trail maps are really good at that because they usually show houses or little log cabins that are meant for the fire watch or rescue people that need to go up and, someone has to stay in that place, whatever it is, right? There's a lot of different maps you can use to get from point A to point B. Again, it's just what do you prefer? But again, having that digital and analog isn't a bad option. You can just stick the Garmin right on your chest rig or on the strap of your ruck and then throw the maps in the back or in an easy accessible pocket. You're going to also want a solar panel, right, or a battery bank or both, and then the appropriate cords to go to everything, right? You're going to have your phone on you. Don't just think that if, satellites shut down, your phone's screwed at that point, right? Phones are extremely important to have, which I don't think many people don't have phones nowadays. But having a way to have your downloaded maps or even something as simple as music, right? I don't see that talked a lot about, but music's going to come in handy. You might not notice it the first 3 days that something happens, but you're like, man, I really want to listen to this song right now. Oh, I don't have my phone on me. So having a way to charge your phone and your Garmin, using that solar panel and battery pack, again, you can just throw it in there. A lot of them are very lightweight and slim, so they're not taking up a whole bunch of space, but you can also use it for other things, right? You might come across someone that needs help and, hey, if you charge my phone, I'll give you whatever, right? Again, another bartering tool that you can use. Having an emergency radio, right? Again, I talked about in the last video, a Baofeng is really great for communicating and you can program emergency frequencies on there. But Walmart has a lot of cheap, walkie-talkies that have those emergency broadcast signals on there. So just having a way to listen to what's going on or what's being pushed out, having that news available over, the radio frequencies that magically fly through the air because of wizards. Having that and understanding where you're at and what situation you're at is extremely important. Just remember to also try to waterproof that again. Throw it in another Ziploc bag. Make your items not expendable, right? You want to hold on to these things. And then with that radio, you're going to want spare batteries for that, double, AAA, whatever it is. Just carry an excess of them. What I've talked about so far really doesn't take up a ton of space. Your biggest thing with your sleeping bag is going to be getting a stuff sack. Right? You can compress it, you can just shove it in there, and then you can cinch everything down so your sleeping system goes from this big to about this big. You open up a lot more space. But another thing is going to be your extra clothes, right? You're going to need that. You're going to get sweaty in the stuff. Salt's going to accumulate from your sweat. It's going to make your stuff a little bit harder, which is more noise that you're making. And then you also just want something, if it's pissing rain, I might want to change into something that's fresh. Having extra clothes on your person is going to be extremely crucial for you surviving an extended period of time. And then with that as well, you're going to want 2 pairs of extra clothes, but then you're also going to want 4 pairs of socks. And anyone that has done any sort of long-range rucking or even rucking out to 6 miles, whatever shoes you're wearing or boots you're wearing that you feel comfortable enough that you can do a long movement in, right? Your feet are going to get sweaty at one point or another, or at the end of the day, you're going to want to air these, let them dogs out, right? So I'm going to want to take off those socks, let them air out, and then maybe put on a pair of fresh new socks after my feet have dried, or wait until the morning to put those new socks on. But having 4 extra sets of socks is going to be really good for your feet. It mitigates trench foot. And again, it just keeps your feet healthy, right? If I start losing skin on my feet or I'm starting to get my feet injured, right, I'm not going to be able to move as far as I'd like to. Carry baby powder. It's good for your feet and your ass. What weather gear is extremely important as well, right? Again, we've talked about a lot of things that can happen with the elements, right? And we talked about it in the podcast and in the last video, but having some sort of way to keep yourself dry if you do need to move, it's absolutely crucial that you're moving through this this sort of torrential downpour, or maybe it's just a light drizzle, right? I have to move. Having something to block that water from seeping into your clothes, getting you soaking wet, is going to be extremely important, right? Again, it doesn't need to be wet weather gear. That's surplus stuff. You can get a poncho that works really well. It covers a lot of your body. You might get like mid shin and down, a little wet. But you know, having something to keep that water off your body is very important. And it's just, again, it's another thing that's going to build your morale while you're out there. It might be pissing rain and you're upset that you're even having to do this in the first place, but hey, I'm not soaked. All right, a handsaw, right, is, you know, if you're in that environment where you do need to cut stuff down and you don't have the means to carry a full axe with you, right, a handsaw is very cool. There's a lot of them that kind of break down how a knife does, right, it folds. But I've used those a lot when I was in Korea for an extended period of time. We had something to train with, some partner force, and we had to build fighting positions, and I had a cheap handsaw. It was like $10. I bought 2 of them. I gave it to one of the other squad leaders, and then we just started cutting down trees and, you know, building fortified fighting positions, building overhead cover with it. Again, they're very cheap. I'll plug the one that I bought after watching Corporal's Corner's video on it. I think it's right around $30. It also comes with a pretty nice knife as well, and a hard sheath for that, that, you know, you want to have in your ruck or on your person. But again, having that folding saw to be able to cut through anything or kind of build wherever you need to, and using that twine I talked about earlier, you can make whatever you want with what nature has provided for you. And then the last very important thing I think you should be carrying is hand sanitizer and baby wipes. All right, it's important to keep yourself clean, keep yourself hygienic, right? Baby wipes have been used for everything from cleaning a baby's ass to cleaning a Marine's ass, right? It's very helpful. I've taken baby wipe showers in the field all the time. So I understand, you know, it's not getting everything out, but it's a very nice feeling when you can clean off all that gunk and shit off your body, or maybe clean around a wound, or whatever the case is, right? You have that option there. Usually they're pretty cheap, $1 or $2 for 100 of them. You throw 1 to 2 packs in your ruck, and then you have a way to clean yourself. Same thing with that hand sanitizer. I might not want to waste my baby wipes on my hands themselves, so, you know, squirting that hand sanitizer on there and really getting into it. Another good small thing to carry. You can get the, I think it's Purell makes them, or Equate, I can't remember which one, but they have a ruggedized carrier for it. So it is hand sanitizer, but it's in a really thick bottle. So if you land on it, it's not going to explode and go everywhere. Now, one of the things that, like, I personally carry that I made my life a lot easier, and you guys don't have to carry it, but one of them is going to be a water key. You know, a lot of the water districts around the United States use a certain key. A lot of them are pretty similar, or even water spigots or water points around an urban environment or housing, right? They use a key to kind of turn on. Same way your fireplace does. It's usually a similar key to that, and they usually have 4 sides to it, so it can go to different sort of water spigots or water fountains. So having that way to access water at a moment's notice, I think that's very important. And if you can't find one of those, right, they're usually on Amazon. And the purpose of us using this is to say, hey, like, you know, we're in a really bad situation. The government has collapsed, or they're not providing for us. Having this key is a way to keep you hydrated. Water and food should be basic human rights. So having that access to water at all points of times with that key is very helpful. And if you don't want to carry that key, you can go get an adjustable pipe wrench or any sort of adjustable wrench, and then start to, it's going to sound sketchy. I've seen people do it. I had a course where a guy did it, but, you know, kind of start to undo part of a fire hydrant. Once that water starts coming out, you can fill up with your stuff and close it back off, right? So having a way to access water, whether it's that key or that ratchet or wrench, again, another thing that I have in my kit, but if you guys want to carry it, I think it's really cool. And it's just another thing to help you kind of live. Again, kind of talked about it earlier with the Skrim and the camo net, but having bungee cords, you know, there's a billion different purposes for that. I won't really, you know, get into that, but also zip ties as well. Red talked about it in the podcast, but every time I need a zip tie, I don't have it. Anytime I need electrical tape, I don't have it. So carrying these small little things might make your life a little bit easier. It might be able to patch up some kit, or, you know, enclose in an area off that you're trying to build, or maybe fixing temporarily your shelter system, whatever it is, right? You know, bungee cord, zip ties, and tape really have a lot of different uses. I don't want to bore you with how many uses that they have. The other thing too is, you know, we're assuming that, you know, something is wrong enough where you need to get out, use your kit and your ruck or your long range pack. You're gonna have your rifle with you, and if you need to use your rifle, you know, you're gonna use it. But having a way to clean it, right? Having a weapons cleaning kit with your lubrication in there. I used gun butter. I think gun butter is the best lubrication product I've ever used, and I've been hunting for a good one for quite a while. I use a lot of gun butter for my stuff. It keeps it well lubricated for a while, and it also helps break down a lot of that carbon buildup. But then with that weapons cleaning kit comes sustainment for my rifle or my pistol. So I usually carry an extra bolt carrier and bolt carrier group in my ruck. It's a sort of waterproof bag with a little bit of lubricant on it, just so if for whatever reason my bolt decides to take a shit, or maybe my firing pin goes out, I can easily swap that in and out. And then another thing too, right, carrying different springs for your trigger housing or whatever it is, whatever your spring you can imagine for your pistol or for your rifle, having that. And then retaining pins, or, you know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong on a rifle, which 9 times out of 10 don't. But having these small things that almost weigh nothing as a mean to fix whatever you can, it's extremely beneficial for you to have in the long run. And then another part of that is going to be having a multi-tool. And having that multi-tool, again, the same thing. It's going to have a knife on it. It's going to have some sort of way to maybe cut through small wood, or it's going to have screwdriver bits, whatever it is, right? A multi-tool is a multi-tool, has a billion different uses, but have one of those in your kit as well. Bug spray is going to be extremely important for you to have as well, right? Where I live, bugs aren't really a big thing until it starts pissing rain in the summer. But, you know, a large portion of the United States isn't like that. And so having that bug spray to kind of keep these things off of you, keep these insects that might be carrying something deadly to you, or something that could really hinder your ability to maneuver, is just going to be another necessity that you're going to want to keep with you. So again, the whole biggest thing with this is, you know, you're trying to survive, and your health is a big part of that. So having the means to get bugs off of you is extremely important. Something to write with and write on, right? I'm a big proprietor of that. That I like to be able to write stuff down. You know, writing on, I usually like to have a Write in the Rain notebook. It's pretty waterproof. You can use their pens. Some other pens work, and a majority of the time pencils work on there as well. So having that, and then again, like I just said before, having a pen or a pencil, right? I need to be able to write on this notebook or whatever I'm trying to carry that I can write on. So I need something to write with. And then, you know, assuming again that we're wearing our stuff when we go out and have to use this long range pack, I might want to carry some extra ammo in the back, maybe 2 or 3 spare AR mags, and maybe 1 to 2 pistol magazines. And if I don't even want to carry that, maybe a way to replenish my magazines that I already have. So just loose rounds, again, bagged up, maybe put some toilet paper or some paper towels in there to kind of break up that sound, but having a way to reload and sustain for yourself. I don't imagine you're going to be going through about 9 magazines worth of shit, but if you do, having that little, oh, hey, I really got into a bad pinch, but I'm not completely screwed, is just another thing that you don't really have to worry about. And then the last thing I'll talk about when it comes to what you should have and shouldn't have in your pack, or what I found helpful, is either a set of binoculars or a spotting scope. You know, most binoculars are anywhere from a 1 to 20 magnification, and then spotting scopes anywhere from 10 to 100, right? What I bought, which I really like and I've been getting used to a lot more recently, was I went to Harbor Freight just looking for random stuff, and I found they had a spotting scope with a tripod, and that was $40, and that's a 20 to 60 magnification. And then I found a set of binos for, I think it was like $10, and that was a 10 times magnification as well. You can actually kind of see the spotting scope in the background. That's the one. You know, it's very compact. You can use that for any sort of surveillance or recon. And then binos do the same thing. If you don't want to lug around a spotting scope, I don't feel like there's much of a weight difference between the two. But if you don't want to lug that around, you can carry your binos, and having that way to see farther out and not wanting to get up close to the problem. Again, very beneficial for you living and, you know, living longer. in this sort of something happened. And yeah, again, just having some sort of magnification, whether it's on your rifle, spotting scope, or binoculars, it's really help you in the long run. All right, now that we've gone over the packing list, one of the things I wanted to talk about was understanding how to stash and mark your bag. Right, so there's going to be a lot of times where you might be doing something, you might need to do some recon on where you're going to next, and just carrying that extra weight really isn't going to be beneficial for you. It might even slow you down. So having a way to stash it, right? We kind of talked about having that Skrim or that camo net, place that in an environment where that would work, right? Where it kind of blends in well, and then having a way to mark it. I try to mark trees as much as I can, or at least on my map in a Garmin if I have that ability to. I'm going to mark those things down. It's like, hey, this is my return to point. And then understanding key terrain is also a good way of marking that area that you need to get to, right? Whether it's a really big, unique looking hill, or maybe a tree that's broken, or there's just, a lot of brush and there's different color, whatever it is that works for you in the environment that you need it to, right? Have that way to mark where you stashed your stuff, right? And stash it as best as you can. Not so good to the point where you can't find your shit, but good enough to where someone else that's not looking for it isn't just randomly going to see it. All right, some closing stuff here. Again, I keep talking about it. I'm going to continue talking about it in every single video, right? Is building a community and spreading knowledge, right? Whether you find one or you build it yourself. Again, extremely important, especially in a situation like this, right? You might have skills that other people don't have, or other people might have skills that you don't have, but understanding how to get and take knowledge from people and giving it back to them is very beneficial, and it'll just help you sustain when something does happen. You have a tight-knit community that they worry about each other, they have each other's back. So building that community or finding that community and spreading that knowledge, very, very beneficial for an end of times or a natural disaster, whatever it is, just going to help you on the long run. Thanks for making it this far into the video. If you could, like and subscribe, right? I don't care if we get a million subscribers or 100. I just want this information to be out there. A lot of things in the tactical community are gate kept, and I'm tired of seeing it, right? This is free information. Everyone should know it, and I feel like you should be able to look back at this video every time without having a paywall or 30,000 ads in between it. And even if you don't like and subscribe, share it to someone. Share it to someone random, or share it to someone that you might have been talking to about similar topics, and you think this is something that they could benefit from, right? This gets them thinking. And yeah, again, the whole point of these videos is just getting that knowledge out there. So share it if you can. Remember, in the description and in the bio, there's also going to be a Google Drive with a bunch of different material for survival, tactics, operations, first aid, combatives, a whole bunch of stuff. Go on there, download it, print it out if you want to, find what you think is important and what applies for you, and then don't have the rest of the shit, whatever it is, right? That information is there for you. It's all for public access. So you do have that at your fingertips. And then another thing too, we started recently was a Discord. I know it might sound dumb. I think it's very useful. There's a lot of like-minded individuals, right, that we're building a community off of in there, that are able to share their experiences, share some tips, or maybe take in some information, and just get good chats going on with people that, again, you might want to build a community with, or at the bare minimum have to know, so that way if you need something and you might need some help with something, they're at your fingertips. The last thing, don't be a liability, right? Get in shape. The last thing you want to do is be the reason why people are pissed off, or be the reason why your family, suffers. If you're just fat and lazy, knock that shit off, please. And if you're just, depressed, get some help. Again, right, a liability doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be mental. And if you're just constantly bummed out, right, and you're not actively seeking help, and you think that just the world's ending all the time when it's not, and something does happen, you're really going to weigh everyone down. So talk to people, maybe get some professional help or get some unprofessional help, whatever it is, just attempt it. And then if you're just fat and lazy, go lift heavy things, put heavy things down, start running, get good at cardio. And remember too, even in the fog of war, a tank is still visible, right? I'll leave you with that. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy your day.